Bite into a stacked sandwich made with Hero Bread, and the only thing you'll think is delicious. You won't think it has up to 19 grams protein, 11 to 32 grams of fiber, or just 0 to 5 grams net carbs. But it does. Hero Bread. No compromises, just loaves, buns, tortillas, bagels, and noodles packed with flavor. Right now, get 10% off at hero.co with code IHEART. That's HERO.co, code IHEART. All figures per serving of Hero Bread. See nutrition facts on hero.co.
Some so-called SUVs feel more like toys. You need a real vehicle that'll handle real life. A real SUV, like the all-new 2027 Kia Seltos. With its best-in-class interior room, it'll make the others feel like toys. Check out the new 2027 Kia Seltos X-Line. It's real-world ready. Kia, movement that inspires. Limited inventory available. Comparison based on publicly available data regarding cargo room in 2026 entry all-wheel drive CUVs as of May 2026. Entry all-wheel drive CUV class as defined by Kia segmentation.
It's dark on the Stewart Highway, has been for over an hour. The orange Combi holds a steady pace north, its headlights pushing a narrow cone of light into country that gives nothing back. On either side of the bitumen, the scrub runs flat and black to a horizon you can only guess at. There are no towns out here, no street lights, no oncoming traffic. Just the road, and the two of them, and the small, warm cabin that carries them through the darkness. Peter Falconio is driving. His girlfriend Joanne Lees is beside him. They're 28 and 27, from West Yorkshire, and 8 months ago the biggest decision in their lives was which visa to apply for. And now they find themselves somewhere north of Alice Springs, on the loneliest road in the country. And behind them, a set of headlights is coming up fast. The lights draw close and hang there, filling the mirrors, and then they flash, high beams once, twice. A white four-wheel drive pulls out and comes alongside. The driver has a drooping moustache and he is pointing at the back of the Combi, mouthing something, his face lit by the dash of his car. Something's wrong with your vehicle, he's trying to tell them. Sparks, pull over. And so Peter does. It is an old Combi after all, hundreds of thousands of kilometres to its name. A mechanical problem would not be a total surprise. And Peter steps out into the cold and walks to the back of the van with the stranger. Joanne slides across into the driver's seat, trying to hear the conversation, to see what's happening. She hears the man ask Peter to have her rev the engine so he can see the exhaust. She presses the accelerator. The engine climbs and fills the cabin and drowns out everything beyond the glass. And under that noise, there's a bang. At first she thinks it must be the car, a backfire of some description, and she's still thinking that, still revving, when the driver's door beside her opens, and it's not Peter standing there, staring at her. It's the man with the moustache, and in his hand, there's a gun. G'day, welcome back to Struth. I'm your storyteller, Mark, and tonight is part one of a two-parter. It covers a story that started on a winter night in 2001, when a young English couple were driving north through the centre of Australia when a stranger flagged them down on an empty highway. By morning, one of them would be the most talked about woman in the country, and the other had disappeared into the darkness. He's never been found. This is the story of Peter Falconio and Joanne Lees, a case I've had more requests for than I can count. So for all of you who have reached out, this one's for you. And a content warning on this one, both parts. There are some horrendous scenes in this story. As always, I won't dwell on the gruesome elements, but I can't cover this case without at least mentioning some of those details. So take care. Peter Falconio and Joanne Lees had been together for about 5 years. They came from the same corner of West Yorkshire, and in the year 2000 they did what thousands of young Britons do. They pointed themselves at the far side of the world and set sail. They came out to Australia on working holiday visas and settled for a while in Sydney, picking up odd jobs, saving what they could, doing the sums that every backpacker does at a kitchen table. And in June of 2001, they had decided to spend some of those savings on a car. Not necessarily a reliable one, but a pretty cool one. An old orange Volkswagen Combi, the kind of van that has carried 100,000 young people across this country and broken down on most of them at some point. But it was theirs, and it meant that they were, in this exciting new place, free. They drove it south first, to Melbourne and then Adelaide. And then they turned north and pointed it at the Red Centre, through that ancient stretch of country that's about as far away from Huddersfield as you could imagine. There's a photograph of them at Uluru, taken not long before that fateful night, and it sums up their trip. The rock behind, the enormous sky. Joanne would later describe the trip in 2 words: young and carefree. And on the afternoon of the 14th of July, they left Alice Springs and headed north on the Stuart Highway. It's a good road and a straight one. It runs for hundreds of kilometres through country that empties out the further you go. The plan, as far as they had one, was Tennant Creek and then further north. They'd done harder driving than this, and there was no reason to think that tonight was any different from the nights before it. And by early evening the light was fading, and somewhere behind them on the same straight road, a man in a white utility was watching their taillights and deciding on his next move. The gun is small and it is close, and the man is telling her to be quiet. He reaches in and he binds her wrist, not with proper handcuffs but with something homemade. Cable ties worked into a loop, the kind of thing a person makes in advance, because they have thought long and hard about this moment. He pulls Joanne out of the van and pushes her towards his own vehicle, and he forces her up into the covered tray at the back, where there is some kind of bed laid out, or a mattress at least, waiting. She asks him the question. She asks if he is going to rape her. He tells her to shut up, and then for a moment, he disappears. Somewhere out in that darkness behind her, she hears the sound of something being dragged along the ground. Her brain scrambles to fill in the gaps. Is that Peter he's dragging across the dry red dirt? She tries desperately to convince herself that she's wrong, but she knows this might be her last chance, that the man is gone from her now for a few seconds, and she knows that she has to act, and quickly. She thrashes and squirms and wriggles free from her bindings, and before she can reflect on what she's achieved, she's over the side of the ute and out into the endless scrub. She runs low and she runs hard, and then she stops. Not just because her lungs are screaming for air, but because she knows that her movement out here in the low scrub makes her the simplest of targets to spot. And so she drops down instead, behind a clump of spinifex, and she does her best to make herself small, to make herself still. A strong torch beam swings across the bush and back again. Whatever he had been doing with Peter, his attention now is entirely focused on her. She remembers that he has a dog with him too, an extraordinary advantage in this cruel game. In this desolated stretch of nothingness, he also has all the time in the world. At this very moment, Joanne is only a matter of metres away, lying flat in the dirt, with her hands still tied and in front of her, having worked them under her feet and around to the front, so at least they are of some use to her now. The beam from the torch continues to scan the environment in a calculated manner, and it passes very near to her. And although she feels as though her emotions will explode from her body at any point, she doesn't move. She doesn't breathe in any way that he could hear either. Finally, he walks back to the vehicles and drives off in the combi. The sound of it begins to fade. But still, she does not move, because, she thinks to herself, this might be some kind of trick. And she's right. He comes back instead on foot, and he searches again with the dog, the torch. The long silences that are worse than the searching, because in the silences, she can't tell exactly where he is. And this excruciating game continues on for hours. And then, at some point, the man gives up. For real this time. He gets into his own vehicle and he drives away for good. And Joanne Lees is alone in the desert, with her hands tied, not knowing if he is truly gone, not knowing where her Peter is, not knowing anything except that she's alive, and she would very much like to stay that way. But she waits until she is as sure as she can be, and then she comes out of the scrub and onto the highway and flags down the only thing moving at that hour, a road train. 2 truck drivers hauling through the night who take one look at this woman on the empty road and stop. They drive her to the Barrow Creek Hotel. It's around 300 kilometres north of Alice Springs, and it's the nearest thing to safety for a very long way, in any direction. The owner of the hotel is a man named Les Pilton, and he comes out to the truck and finds Joanne curled up in the cab. He later said she was in a fetal position, cowering away from the world, and it took him and the driver some coaxing to get her out. The emergency call went in at about 1:30 in the morning. It reached the police station at Alice Springs, where the shift sergeant on duty was a woman named Erica Gibson. She's spoken about that night. A truck driver, she said, was reporting that a woman had been abducted on the Stewart Highway and that her boyfriend was missing. And it was, in her own words, remarkable, because that was not the sort of call that came in. The usual stuff were domestic disturbances, traffic violations, the ordinary trouble of a country town. And so Gibson and the watch commander got in a car and drove 3 hours through the dark to Barrow Creek. And they made that drive knowing that there was an armed man somewhere out on the same highway and that he could be coming the other way, straight at them, at any point during those 3 hours. She has said, plainly, that these days the response would look very different. She found Joanne Lees waiting at the bar. Wide-eyed, she said, red dirt all over her. Not overly emotional, more like a deer caught in headlights, and relieved, above everything else, to have someone to talk to. Gibson took her into the manager's office and began, slowly, to take her account. And here, the night, which had already been unimaginably cruel, found one more way to torture Joanne. There was a power surge at the hotel, and the computer Gibson was using to record the interview lost the lot. Every word of nearly 3 hours of a traumatised woman's statement were gone. And so they started again. Gibson took the whole account a second time, from the beginning, from a woman who had been awake and hunted and terrified for the better part of a day. And the second telling came out just the same as the first. Her story, Gibson said, was consistent. And everything that we've shared with you thus far on this episode comes entirely from the story that she told. By the time the sun was up, the search had begun in earnest, and the first thing it turned up was blood. Police found it at the roadside where the combi had stopped. It was Peter's blood, on the bitumen. And not far away they found the van itself, pushed into the bushland off the highway. What they did not find, then or in the days after, or the weeks or the months, was Peter Falconio. There was blood, there was a van, and there was a woman with a story, but there was no body. And so the world's media descended upon Alice Springs. It's hard now to convey how big this thing became. A young English couple, the outback, an armed stranger, a boyfriend spirited away into the night. It had everything, and the press of two hemispheres swarmed on a desert town to feed on it. Cameras followed Joanne Lees everywhere she went, and as they followed her, they began, quietly at first, and then not quietly at all, to turn on her. Because Joanne Lees did not behave the way people had decided a victim should behave. She was contained. She was guarded. She did not weep for the cameras, and to a watching public that had already cast her in a role, the absence of tears read as an absence of grief, and the absence of grief read as guilt. And then more came out. It emerged that she had, at some earlier point, had a brief affair with a friend back in Sydney, and that was enough for some people to build an entire theory on. At her first public appeal for information, she wore a t-shirt with the words "Cheeky Monkey" on it, and she was pilloried for that too, as though the wrong slogan on a shirt were evidence of a hard heart. And the theories bred in the heat that she had done it herself, that the two of them had staged it, some sort of insurance fraud, that Peter had faked his own death and slipped away and would surface somewhere with a new name. That the whole account, the man, the gun, the ute, the dog, the hours in the spinifex, was no more than an invention. In 2002, the British journalist Martin Bashir, the man who had by then interviewed Princess Diana, sat Joanne Lees down for a paid television interview. And he put it to her directly. He asked her whether she had killed Peter. She laughed, and then she said no. And you can bet that that laugh was held against her too. Bashir pressed on the details, the exact points that the doubters kept returning to. How, he asked, if your hands were bound behind your back, did you flag down a truck? And why did police find only your footprints at the scene and not Peter's, not the killer's? She answered both questions. The bindings, she explained, had been in front of her by then. She'd worked them to the front while she lay hidden, which is a thing a person can do, and which is a task that she had completed. And as for the footprints, her prints were found where she had hidden, in a patch of ground that took an impression, softer earth. The rest of the scene, the roadside, was a hard, gravelled, leaf-strewn surface that held no prints from anyone, not from her, not from Peter, and not from the man who took him. There was nothing sinister about their absence. The answers were sound, but sound answers are quiet things, and the doubt around Joanne's story was very loud.
A burst pipe, a dead water heater, the AC calling it quits. Who do you call? HomeServe is an easy way to handle unexpected home repairs, with plans covering stuff basic homeowners insurance usually won't. Instead of scrambling for a contractor, you make one call to get the repair process started. Join the millions of customers who trust HomeServe right now. Go to homeserve.com/podcast for 50% less your first year. That's homeserve.com/podcast. Savings compared to renewal price void in Florida.
But there was one person, at least, that began to recognise a pattern. Erica Gibson, the sergeant who had taken the statement twice in one night, pointed to another Australian woman who had once stood in the desert glare and been disbelieved by a nation for the crime of not falling apart in public. Lindy Chamberlain, 1980, at Uluru, The same rock that Joanne and Peter had photographed themselves in front of only weeks before all of this. Chamberlain's 9-week-old daughter, Azaria, was taken from the family tent. A dingo took her, Chamberlain said, and the country quite simply did not believe it. She was composed where people wanted her broken, and the composure was read as coldness, and her manner and her faith were picked over until the public had all but tried her before any court did. But a court did try Lindy Chamberlain. In 1982, she was convicted of murdering her own baby and sentenced to life with hard labour. It was years before a chance discovery near a dingo lair, a small piece of Azaria's clothing, brought the whole case against her crumbling down. Chamberlain, as a result, was released. Her conviction was quashed, and the whole story she told from the very first night turned out to be true all along. The nation had been very wrong about Lindy Chamberlain. And that, Sergeant Gibson was saying, was the danger. A composed woman is not a liar just because a crowd wants tears. But there's a second edge to that same knife, and it's the one that this two-parter is perhaps built on. A country being wrong once doesn't mean it's wrong every time. Lindy Chamberlain's story proves that public suspicion can destroy an innocent woman. But it does not prove that public suspicion is always mistaken. And so the question that settled over Joanne Lees in 2001, the question that has never entirely lifted, is not answered by the apocryphal tale of Lindy Chamberlain. It's only sharpened by it. In fact, some might even argue the spectre of Azaria's case has pushed this one in the wrong direction. Is this about a woman wronged twice over, first by a killer and then by the general public? Or is this the time that the crowd's instinct was right? While the nation argued about a woman's tears, or lack thereof, the man a jury would one day convict of Peter's murder was a very long way away. He was changing his hair, changing his vehicle, and getting on with his life. The break, in this case, when it came, did not come from the vast machinery of the search. It came from someone who knew the accused. One of the man's own associates went to the police. He told them about a bloke he knew, a long-distance driver who ran drugs up and down the centre of the country, and about some things the bloke had said and done. He'd seen him making restraints by hand, homemade cuffs from cable ties, and the man had asked him a question, the sort of question you don't forget once it's been asked of you. How would you go about burying a body? His name was Bradley John Murdoch. He was a mechanic by trade, but had turned himself into a drug runner. He carried drugs from Adelaide up to Broome, which meant he knew the Stuart Highway and the country around it the way other people know their own street. Every roadhouse, every sidetrack, every dark and useful place where a man on his own could stop and not be seen. And in the days after the 14th of July 2001, Bradley Murdoch changed. He'd shaven off his moustache, he'd cut his hair, and he'd gone to considerable trouble to alter the very vehicle Joanne Lees had described, extending the tray, fitting a new canopy, remaking the thing she would have to identify. He very nearly got away with all of it too. What undid him was the smallest and most modern kind of evidence. When Murdoch was eventually taken into custody over a separate matter, police took a sample of his DNA, and when they ran it against what they had kept from that night, it provided them with some answers. Murdoch's DNA was on Joanne Lees' t-shirt. It was on the gear stick of the combi. It was on the homemade handcuffs that had bound her wrists. And there was one more thing, the detail that the lead detective, Colleen Gwynn, would later call a trophy. Wrapped around Murdoch's gun holster, police found an elastic hair tie. It belonged to Joanne, and he kept it. The trial ran in Darwin in December 2005. Murdoch's defence fought hard on the science, on the identification, on the absence of a body, and we're going to come back to every one of those fights next time, because they didn't end in that courtroom. Questions are still being asked. But the jury heard the case the Crown put, and the jury was not divided. They also didn't take long to come to a conclusion. In around 8 hours they returned a verdict, unanimous on every count. Guilty of the murder of Peter Falconio. Guilty of the assault and the attempted abduction of Joanne Lees. Bradley Murdoch was sentenced to life with a minimum of 28 years before he could even ask to be released. Joanne Lees called the verdict a relief and said that for a long time she had feared this moment would never come. On the courthouse steps, standing beside Peter's family, she spoke about being able to take another step in grieving for Pete. After 4 years, the woman the world had put on trial had been believed completely by the only jury that counted. And Bradley Murdoch, as they led him away to begin his sentence, was already saying the thing he would go on saying for the rest of his life. He said he had nothing to do with it. He knew nothing about this murder. And so that is the case as it was found by the courts. A stranger on a dark road. A murdered man, perhaps. A woman who survived him and was doubted for surviving. A drug runner who knew the country, who kept a trophy, whose own DNA gave him up. A jury of 12 who agreed on every count, which led to a life sentence and a man behind bars. It's a complete story. It's got a beginning, a middle, and a verdict at the end of it. And for most crimes, that's where we'd stop. But this one is missing something. Something that has been missing from the very first morning. There is still no Peter Falconio. 25 years on, there is no grave for his parents to stand at. No bones to bury, nothing to lay down. The man convicted of killing him never said a word about where he went, and he carried that silence all the way to his own death. The jury was certain the evidence was there. Justice, as we like to say, was done. But what if we got it wrong? We'll cover that part 2 right here on Struth. You'll be able to hear it this Friday. Thanks for listening.
This is a stunning story based on the hit true crime podcast Betrayal. He was a tall, handsome police officer, the man of her dreams. Caroline knew right away he was the man she would spend her life with. But then she got a text that changed everything. The man she loved was a severe sex addict, having affair after affair with so many different women in his cop car while on duty. I implore you to watch Betrayal: Dirty Secrets, now streaming on Hulu and Hulu on Disney+.
Reese Witherspoon here, checking into my favorite hotel in Paris. Bonjour.
Bonjour.
I'm traveling with my Wells Fargo Autograph Journey card, so I earn rewards wherever I book travel. 5 times points with hotels, 4 times with airlines, 3 times on restaurants and other travel, and 1 point on other purchases. Phew, that was a lot. I need to lie down. Is the room ready?
Visit wellsfargo.com/autograph journey. Terms apply. Jardiance has a big story to tell. Discover Jardiance empagliflozin 10 or 25 milligram tablets. Visit Jardiance.com, call 1-888-968-6648, or talk to your doctor to see if Jardiance is right for you.
A little pill with a big story to tell.